Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 715th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today we have Michael Drew. He is the co-author of Pendulum. I have spoken about this many times before. He and Roy Williams, Roy H. Williams, wrote this book back in 2012, and I actually did a report on it. Let me see here. I was going to pull this up before I started, but I've been watching the Pope as I do this. Actually, I just had Michael on here Thursday, May 8th, and then they announced who the new Pope is. So we've been talking about that. But episode 507, so way back in June of 2021, I did a review on the book. Great book. But Michael has helped produce 131 New York Times bestsellers. So the guy knows what he's talking about. And we go down a couple of rabbit holes. We talk about, the difference in direct response marketing versus branding, longer term marketing, transactional versus relational branding and marketing and sales. And he shares a lot of specifics on the book publishing industry, things I didn't know. And he's offered to come back, and I'll probably have him as a regular guest. Just a smart dude. Been in the game a long time. He shares the story, how he got started. And so it's funny, some things I didn't know. But he got after it, and he has put in the time. And so he knows what's up. So you're in for a treat. If you need some help growing your sales, go to my homepage, wesschaefer.com. While it's still up, I'm offering or taking free Pick My Brain sessions. I got a little video there introducing it right at the top of the homepage. And you can schedule your time. Okay, 45 minutes. And we can talk about whatever. And still got the Weekly Whisper, but it's daily. But I like the name, the Weekly Whisper. I'm working on some new artwork. Created a couple new tools using Substack, some now. So experimenting with that, doing more with YouTube. It's all about getting the word out. People don't do business with you for one of two reasons. Either they haven't heard of you or they have. So I hope it's the former. If it's the latter, I don't know if I can help you. But otherwise, I can help you. So sign up for some free help and then come back and listen to this episode, this interview with Michael Drew. Michael Drew, crazy hair day, all the way from Lehigh, Utah. Welcome to the Sales Podcast, man. How the heck are you?
I'm great, Wes. How are you?
I'm good. Man, I'm not lying. I told you this. For a decade at least, I've been talking about this book. When did this come out? Let me see. Let's find out exactly. 2012. So over a decade. And I got it, I think, right when it came out. So for 13 years, I've been talking you up, man.
I mean, you might be talking about more because Roy and I have been doing that presentation since 2003.
Yeah, well, and I was there. I was hitting Roy's classes when he was still in the strip mall in Buda. So before he bought the property, maybe he had the property, he hadn't developed anything. He didn't have Tuscan Hall, but I was going to Tuscan Hall events
upstairs in the attic in that space, and then they moved outside to the slightly bigger space, and then
Tuscan Hall has an upstairs.
No. I'm saying at the Buda location.
Oh, okay.
So he had his ad office downstairs, and then upstairs in the attic.
Oh, there was an upstairs there. I thought it was just like a little strip center. I went there a couple times for his free. He would do his free like Friday thing or monthly thing.
Yep.
I didn't know there was an upstairs. Did he have a couple of offices?
So they had two buildings right next to each other.
Okay.
And they got the second building the year before that they decided to start building the academy. So
gotcha.
You have to remember, I've known Roy since 1999, 1998, actually. So
how did y'all meet?
Well, I worked with a publisher called Bard Press.
Oh, yeah.
And Ray Bard was the publisher and published the Wizard of Ad's trilogy. And
Yep.
I was 19, and Ray said to me first day on the job, Michael, we publish business authors. What our authors want more than anything else in the world is to be a New York Times bestselling author. What I want you to do is go figure out how the New York Times and other bestseller list works. And as a young, naive 19-year-old, I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And so funny enough, what I literally did is I called the person at the New York Times and said, hey, I'm Mike Drew with Bard Press. Can you tell me how your list works?" And of course, the gentleman, his name was John Wright, laughed at me and said, "Nah, but keep calling back, kid. You're kind of fun. We'll keep talking." I called Bob Hughes at the Wall Street Journal, same conversation. Jackie Blaze at USA Today, and so forth. And so I started talking to them and having some really basic conversations. And then within about a month of that, Ray came to me and said, "Hey, our next book is Secret Formulas of the Wizard of Ads by Roy H. Williams. I need you to make it a New York Times bestseller." And I'm like, "Okay." And so I went and met with Roy at his old office there in Buda. He had a different type of office with a big giant barn and some other things. And we came up with a plan, which was to mail an advance copy of the book to the general manager of every radio station in the country, with an offer that said, if again 99, if you buy 20 copies of the book from a specific bookstore that I inform them to buy it from, and if they run 200
Was it
radio,
like a local bookstore or from one specific?
it would have been from a local bookstore, but like a local Barnes and Noble or a local Books a Million or a local, at the time Borders was still in business, right? So it would have been a specific store in their area in their market, so that we got the sales reported. And so we had that, plus they had to run 200 radio ads
So I'm sorry, tell me again. So the offer was if they buy 20 books.
and run 200 radio ads promoting the book.
Wow.
And they could run it overnights or whatever, like in unsold inventory, which was fine. Which is what a lot of them did. But we had almost 800 stations out of the 6,000 US stations participate. And
You mailed to 6,000
yep,
stations?
yep. And
You mailed a physical book.
not only did we bail, I then oversaw a team that did all of the follow up, and I personally talked to about 2,000 stations over a 3 month period of time. It's where Roy and I actually developed the relationship, because I wasn't then working out of the Bard Press office. I was going down to Buda to Roy's office and working from 7 a.m. till 5 p.m. every day. And then Roy would be like, "Hey, come in my office." And then he'd either have somebody he was talking to, and I would just sit there, be a fly on the wall, or he and I would have conversations for half an hour to an hour. I did that every day for 3 months.
Mm.
Right. So that's where he and I developed the personal relationship that we have. And of course, I launched that book, Secret Formulas of the Wizard of Ads, to number 3 on the New York Times and number 1 on the Wall Street Journal bestsellers list, is my first of now 131 consecutive New York Times bestselling books.
Mm. So, okay, so let's finish this. So they buy 20 copies, they run 200 ads, and then what do they get for that?
Thank you. Roy created a training library on VHS at the time, because we were back then CDs were there, but VHS was as common or more common than the DVD. And basically what we said is that, look, the book as a third party testament states and proves that radio is the best form of advertising for a smaller, medium sized brick and mortar store or business. What we're going to do is we're going to give you those books as ammunition. We're then going to give you 12 tapes of training from Roy, and Roy's going to train your sales reps on how to use the book to be able to go generate more advertising revenue. And so we had all of those stations participate. Now, certainly, one of the reasons we got our foot in the door is Roy, back then, I think, was the number 5 buyer of radio in the country. He wrote for Radio Inc. And he was already a big name before I started working.
So these stations would know him?
Yeah, they would know who he was.
Okay.
And
So, how?
he wrote for Radio Inc. And he used to speak at every radio bureau convention for every state every year. He would do 50 of those a year, right? So
Mm.
anybody who either read Radio Inc., which is the top trade publication, or went to their state trade convention, would see Roy. And so, and then he was a huge buyer of media as well. Like the fifth back then, I think they're third now in radio, in terms of total volume of radio buys. So yeah, everybody knew who he was.
So how does that math work out, though? I mean, you got 6,000, you mailed a book, and let's say it's $5. I mean, you may know the actual math, but I mean, there's 30 grand right there to
He's
mail out.
So it's a great question, and this is the question is one that I have with every author to start off with, which is the revenue from the book against the marketing cost. And before I go into his numbers, what I'll say is I have 131 New York Times bestsellers. 7 of those authors made more money from the sale of their book than they did on marketing costs. However, 110 of those clients permanently increased their gross revenue by $1 million. 10 of those clients permanently increased their gross revenue by $50 million or more. And 7 increased their gross revenue by $100 million or more. So the math, if your measurement of success is revenue from book sales against marketing cost, will almost never make sense. And to be honest, the 7 books that eventually made money took a few years and sold into the millions of copies before it broke even, because there's so little revenue for from a book. But the book as a relationship building device, as a conversation starter, is a really great tool to be able to build and grow your business. Right. You showed Pendulum. I get I hear at least 2 or 3 times a week from somebody who's read Pendulum, who wants to talk more or interview me about Pendulum or whatever else. It has nothing directly to do with my business, Pendulum. I mean, there is certainly a reason why we did it, and there is a tie-in, but it's not as direct as you might think. But it's still a huge audience builder and relationship builder for me. And so on Roy's cost, he spent about $400,000 to sell about $400,000 in books. He could have given away 20,000 books, and paid the retailers for that and spent the same amount. The difference, though, beyond the radio spots, is that there's a big difference between somebody who is given the book, like you read Pendulum, you are in the Pendulum, you want to know and talk about it. If you gift that to somebody,
I have underlined and written notes in Pendulum. I've done a podcast review of Pendulum.
nice, nice. You've read it. If you give that book to somebody who
It
has
won't
no
be read.
intention, who had no intention of reading it, they probably aren't going to read it. I'll tell you, Roy is one of my best friends and mentors. Gives me books all the time. I might read 10% of them, maybe not because he has good intentions. They're books I probably should read. He has reasons for doing it. It's just I have to psychologically, physiologically be ready to read that book. And so gifting
Well, the
20.
problem is he also gives you bourbon and wine. So I mean, I can't read and drink. I'm just saying,
Well,
I'm weak.
about a third of the attendees are Jews, and about a third of them are Mormons, and they don't drink, and they go to all of those events too. So, you don't have to drink the whiskey from the
I
whiskey ball
understand, but
or the
for
wine.
me, I'm just saying. I remember walking into that first Friday event, 9 a.m., and there's that cooler
Purple
of
coffee.
of non bowling alley beer. I still call it bowling alley beer. Bud Light. Yeah, no, there's no bowling alley beer here. And he had wine, and he's up there sipping a little red wine. I'm like, where am I? It's like I think I'm home.
Yeah, at the academy, we do things differently because we want to create pattern interrupts. In school, we have an education, we have an idea of what education looks like, sitting at a table and being taught a certain way and whatnot. And Roy's like, no, we're going to disrupt that. We're going to do it differently because that's what creates something that's memorable. If it reflects everything that you've already always done, then you'll forget it pretty quickly. So he's done an amazing job, both originally at his office in Butte and now at the Academy, of curating events and experiences that you can only experience there, that is not relatable to anything else that you might do. So
you know, it's interesting. Two things. It was 2012. I was at a conference, a software conference, a software that I've sold for many years, since 2008. I wrote a book on their software, and I was sitting there with a woman that I'd gotten to know, big entrepreneur, and she was a New York Times bestselling author. And I'm having lunch with her, and she said, "Oh, if she said the same thing, if you have $400,000, you can be a New York Times bestselling author." And I was like, "What?" So I mean, it it kind of hurt my soul. I'm still kind of naive in business. I'm like, I think I know people can be cruel and evil and blah blah blah, but I still hope and give people the benefit of the doubt that it is what you see. But I mean, but to hear it's gamed
Well,
so much.
let's talk about that, because there's gaming and there's understanding the game, which are two different things, right? If you're playing baseball, you want to understand all of the rules of the game so that you can play at the highest possible level. Gaming it would be corking the bat, or putting cuts on the baseball as a pitcher to be able to get better grip or whatever else. That's gaming the system. Knowing how to pitch better or how to catch better or how to hit better is not gaming the system, it's playing the game better. And so there is a distinction between the two. But the reason why even that fine line came in is that between 1880 to 1980, the average number of books published each year was about 40,000 copies. The average retail bookstore, even today, but back then as well, carried on average about 100,000 unique titles. Of those unique titles, between 70 to 80% are what we call backlist titles, which are your perennials, your classics, and last year's bestsellers. So the remaining 20 to 30% are frontlist titles, new titles that are coming out that year. And so historically in the United States, most books that would be published by a major publisher would actually make it onto retail shelves. And so then something happened in 1980 that changed everything. The proliferation of the personal computer and word processing. And then every Tom, Dick, and Harry, and Amy, and Sue, and Sally thought that they could write a book, and they started to. When I started in the industry in 98, there were 76,000 books published, almost double what there was in 1980. Last year, there were 1,076,000 books published by publishers, not self published, not POD published, not published through uh, KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing. That's from small, medium, and large publishers. They're all still vying for the same shelf space of 20 to 30 spots. And so what you have then is uh, a change in the model, where historically the publishers would make the author. They would send the author on an author tour. They would get speaking gigs. They would get TV shows, radio shows, or whatever else, and they would actually own it. And they would give basically a percentage of royalty to those authors. But when we got to a point where anybody could publish, like there was no such thing as self-publishing pre 1980. To be able to figure out printing and all of the other things was too expensive, and then distribution, of course. So as we move from 80 until today, the model had to change. Publishers had to look at things differently, and the modeling, therefore, had to look different. But one of the things that is important to observe from a book standpoint is that the majority of books, 80% of books, still sell through retailers, online or off. Yes, authors do have direct sales, there's special sales, but most books still sell through retailers. And while most people think today that Amazon sells most books, they sell the most books, but they don't sell the volume that people think. As the number one book seller, they sold 16.6% of books last year. 16.6. Barnes and Noble, in contrast, the number two retailer in the space, primarily brick and mortar, sold 11.1. So Amazon sold almost 50% more than Barnes and Noble, but now you're only at 27.7% of all sales. If you take all online sales, Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com and Books A Million, all of the online sales, it represents about 24.3% of sales, right? So it's a huge number, but the brick and mortar sales represent 75.6% of or 7% of sales, right? So the brick and mortar,
And is it these are US numbers?
these are US numbers.
Okay.
The thing is, the US is the biggest book market. You go to
Sure, sure.
Europe, you have French and German and Portuguese and Italian and Greek and all of the other languages, and so they have very small, unique markets. Whereas U.S. publishing can expand a little bit to England and South Africa and Australia and New Zealand, but it as an individual book market, it is the single largest book market in the world. Even in India, they've got or China, they've got multiple different languages. It's not the same.
Yeah.
So
So you're
yeah,
saying so 75% are still in the store?
yeah.
That's amazing. Cause like I'm such a hermit It's like I go to church and I go to jujitsu in the gym. That's about it.
Well, gyms sell books. Some churches have
I
bookstores in
I
the.
know, but I used to. I mean, I drive right by a Barnes and Noble every day on the way to jujitsu, and I used to stop in there all the time. You know, we got 7 kids. We used to go, especially in the summer before we got solar. And it's so damn hot here in the summer, and electricity was so expensive. We'd go to had the little kid section, and we'd go sit there in the middle of the day because it was cooler. but I mean, I went all the time. I love thumbing through books and magazines. I got so many books. Um, but
I
I don't
grew
I
up.
don't go to a physical store anymore. I haven't been to Barnes and Noble in years.
It's certainly down from where it used to be, but the thing is, you also have to consider that grocery stores sell books. All stores sell books. A smaller number, but they still sell
Yeah,
them. Walmart sells books.
yeah.
Sam's Club sells books. Costco used to sell it all the time. Now they're in and out, but they sell books, right? Any big box chain sells books. Target sells books. Even
My
Office.
library sell, dude. I got a stack. They had this $5 per bag sale.
Yep.
It was epic. I got all these classics. It was awesome.
Yeah, and library sell books too. So you've got all of those different things that just add up. And so success from a book standpoint still is predicated upon distribution. And so what happens with a book is you have the I was describing backlist titles versus frontlist titles. Well, the objective is to go from being a frontlist title to sell enough volume within a 60 to 90 day time frame to become a backlist title. So literally, whether a book lives or dies is based on what happens at the retail level in 60 to 90 days. And so what you want to consider with that is that a book is bought, and the decision on how many copies to make is of a title is made at the corporate level, and then the books are shipped to the individual stores. But the individual store's internal inventory management system is what determines whether or not they carry the book on an ongoing basis. And
Right.
so, to have a book that works long term, you have 60 to 90 days to create the sell through of the book. And the important thing to note with that most people don't realize is that in publishing, books are 100% returnable by the retailer to the publisher if they don't sell.
Mm.
Right. And so, with that brings in an interesting dichotomy. Now, the fact that they're returnable allows for them to have that movement of new titles to put in the store on an ongoing basis because they're getting rid of the ones that didn't sell and putting in new ones. But it does a couple of things. Number one, it's created a merchandising condition in publishing, which all books now have to pay for. And in publishing, it's called co-op. So if we apply it to grocery stores, you walk into a grocery store, you want to buy a can of soup. What's your favorite brand of soup?
I have no idea. Campbell's,
Campbell's. Okay. Do you have a specific kind of soup that you like?
the big meaty one.
All right, cool. So you got big meaty one. So if you had a big beefy brand uh, X that was a fourth of the price of the Campbell soup, big beefy brand that you like, which do you go with?
I go with the cheap one.
We're the cheaper one. That's transactional marketing. That's people that right. That you're right transactionally. But what happens is one of the tactics that Campbell's deploys is they pay the grocery store chain to have their soup at hip level. And they do the same thing in publishing with books. So every frontlist title that you see on retail shelves is paid for by the publisher, and that's irregardless of whether they sell zero books or all of the books. They pay it and it's a per unit expense. And so what they look at is the placement in the store, the number of books in the store, and the duration of the co-op. Most co-op is about a 2 week time frame. And so what you look at is if it's spine out in category, it's $1 per unit. If it's face out in category, it's $2 per unit. If it's end cap on the end of the aisle where there's fewer books and more exposure, it's $3 per unit. If it's on the table at the front of the store, it's $4 per unit. If it's point of purchase or special display, it's $5 per unit. Then at the airports, Hudson's and WH Smith and others, it's twice that. And so they pay that for every book. So let's say the average is $3 a unit and they put 50,000 copies out on the shelf. That publisher is paying $150,000 to buy the shelf space whether they sell 0 books or all 50,000 or anywhere in between. And they're paying the printing cost, say $2 a book. Now you're at $5 a unit, that's 50,000. Their out of pocket cost to do that is $250,000 before they ever sell a single book.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is the everybody has to pay the co-op. The retailers, there's so many books, so many publishers. The co-op is a guaranteed thing. Obviously, printing is a guaranteed thing. And so what you have to do is not only have that in place, the co-op and the printing, you also then have to come to the table with a marketing plan and strategy that incentivizes the stores to bring in inventory of your book so that it's there. And then that execution of that strategy, in theory, is what creates the sell through of the book at the retail level, that creates the model that lets the book stay on the shelf beyond the first 90 days.
So 1999, Roy does this, right? So $400,000, that'd be $700,000 today, right? So,
No Wizard Academy, his platform was smaller,
yep.
right?
So, what? How does somebody know that that's the best play for them? I mean, you gave some great numbers of how many extra million, 10 million, 100 million. But I mean, that's 131. There's probably others that spent $400,000 and didn't get there.
Yeah, funny enough, about today, about a third of our clients are folks that I talked to, and then somebody else sold them smoke and mirrors that they could do it for less, and they went out and spent a bunch of money and failed. Because the reality is that there are rules in the industry that have to be followed. I don't set them. I just understand how to play the game of
Right.
baseball, the game of publishing better to be able to hit better and throw better and catch better and all of those things, right? And that's the actual objective of working well. Other folks do try to game the system. They try to find
Yeah, no, I get that, but I'm just saying, like, if I'm sitting here right now, I got $700,000 burning a hole in my pocket. It's like, well, first I got to write a book that is good. I mean, I know you can game the system, and even a bad book can get some publicity, but it won't have legs for the long haul. I mean, Roy's books are timeless. I still recommend them. But if I got 700 grand burning a hole in my pocket, like, how do I know
it's it's
what?
it,
Why
it's
is this the right avenue?
it's a great question. So I'm going to answer it in a semi long response. So I'll get to it fully. But
Because look, I want to buy a NASCAR. I just want the sales whisperer on a NASCAR. So
so obviously you look at the ROI on everything, and the saying is to hammer everything is a nail. And really, at the end of the day, what my business does is build thought leadership businesses. A book is just the biggest tool. It's not the only tool, but it's the biggest tool that we use in building that business. And so we look at it in context of, does the book um, deepen relationships with existing customers or start new conversations? Roy talks about gravity well, and what he and I, through our research for Pendulum, we refined gravity well down into is what we call the 12 steps of intimacy. Direct response marketers, which I refer to as douchebag marketers because they're like pickup artists trying to get into their customer pants, like a pickup artist trying to get in a woman's pants, only they want to get the wallet, right? Um, they focus on that transactional marketing of selling a can of soup, that the manipulative tactics that get you to buy my cheap brand of beefy buffy beef over camel soup, whatever those tactics are. But when you work in the world of thought leadership and influence, your objective isn't to sell a commodity. It's to change someone's mind, their heart, their body, their soul, their way of thinking. Right? You're trying to transform the individual in some capacity, and that is distinctly different. That to gain the trust for somebody to say, "Yeah, I'm going to let you change my body." Right? That's a huge level of trust that you've got to have in that person for you to say, "Yes, change my body or my mind or whatever in that way." And so um, the model that we look at is building relationships through intimacy. And so the work that we found was by that we um, clarify Roy's gravity well concept with, and what we replace funnels, which is what direct response marketers use. The funnels, which is a push process, which is, by the way, if you read Pendulum, a very me modality versus a we modality to push versus pull. But um, they're pushing to be able to get the immediacy of the lead and the sale. Building a relationship is antithetical to that. Building a relationship takes time. It takes investment by both parties, and it in terms of the relationship, it pays out in a much bigger way. It's got what we call LTV, lifetime value, greater lifetime value to build a relationship, but it takes longer to get there. So the value is greater, but it takes longer to get there. And the reason why direct response marketers get so much attention is because they're talking about the immediacy of what's going on. If you run this ad, you're going to get this result, which equals this revenue. And so Roy likes to call people who do that short dick weasels who are stepping all over their dicks because they're focused on the short term versus what creates that long term
But
relationship.
don't you need a balance sometimes? I mean, it's the old adage of, eat the rabbits while you hunt the elephants.
So yes, but here's what you need to know. And a rabbit will never be an elephant. And so what happens is that the transactional marketers say that everything comes in from the rabbit hunting, and what you want are elephants. Where you're really going to build the thing is that, and with that, what happens is the process of doing both, they conflict with each other. So this is, let me explain the 12 steps because I think it'll make it
No,
clear.
I get it, but it's like I'm working with small local businesses, and I don't know, I got a soft spot for these guys, but a lot of them struggle. I'm doing a direct response, a big postcard, 9 inches by 12 inches, for local businesses to affordably get the word out, right? And these people, they struggle. Restaurants, they're struggling. General contractors, electricians, plumbers, uh, they they don't see the big picture. They kind of get it, but like, they can't stroke a check for 40 grand, to hit 40,000 homes over 6 months with an ad, you know.
Which I understand, but what I'm saying is that, uh, and Roy talks about this very plainly in the Wizard of Oz trilogy. The problem is that once you're on the sales model of burn and churn, you're on the sales model of burn and churn, and you're now addicted to it like any other addiction because now you have to do that. The actual amount of work to do burn and churn and to build a relationship are the same. The difference is the payout. When
Yes, but if somebody's struggling, if they're barely profitable,
so but so
how do
so
they get there?
I would step back. I would tell a business owner, let's step back. I would say you need money for your business, but you're serving a customer. They're a human being, and what they're interested in is what problem you can solve for them. They're not interested in that you have a business problem. They're interested in they have a problem that you're going to solve. And if you then humanize that understanding, again, the analogy that I would use is being a pickup artist. The objective of a pickup artist teachers is to teach men how to use psychologically manipulative tactics to be able to go into a bar, club, or event and to be able to use those tactics to manipulate three women into having sex with them. Right. And it works. It works predictably when you talk to 100 women applying these models, you're going to get three of them that'll sleep with you. But the probability of any of those relationships being a long term relationship is less than 3%. And so the question is, do you want, because literally what they're doing, because the short-term money is so important to them, what they're doing is they're acting like that pickup artist to be able to generate that short-term revenue, which means that they are objectifying their clients. And in the objectification of their clients, they're actually doing two things. They're not building long-term relationship, but they're also communicating to audiences that they just want to objectify them. And so they get branded and viewed as a company that just is trying to sell them and to objectify them. That's why car dealerships, as an example, often get a bad rap. But I work with vendors all the time on my house or business or whatever else. It's the same thing. When a company, if I feel like I'm being sold, I'm actually I don't feel good about it if I hire them, and more than likely I'm not going to buy from them because of that
Right.
experience.
So how how do you know so much about pickup artists? Have you been reading this guy?
I Neil Strauss. There's another gentleman who goes to the academy who's a former and reformed pickup artist, Tucker Max, and
Oh yeah, I know Tucker.
Tucker goes to the academy, and he's reformed. He's no longer there. What occurred is he and I became friends, and at the academy I started talking about the 12 steps of intimacy, and he would be in the room and he'd be like, "Michael's right. We do the exact we used to teach this stuff on the opposite for the pickup artistry work." So I know from discussions and ongoing stuff from one of considered the top experts in the space, or at least formerly, that the pickup artist work is what direct response marketing is, and
So
it's in contrast to the relationship marketing.
here's a funny story, right? This is probably we were in this. We've been in this house since 2010, so it was somewhere around 2011, 2012. I think let's go with 2012. That's kind of the theme. I think that's the pivotal year for me. That's the
Right.
pendulum year for me, right? But I digress. I was I was working on a blog post, and so I wanted to do a post on like top sales books. So I do a search and get all these different results. Top 10 sales book, best sales books ever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm seeing all these books. And I'm like, okay, I got that one, got that one. Like, I got all of them, right? I had 95% of them, but I saw rules of the game. And I'm like, what is that? And it's a pickup artist. And I'm like, I can't buy that. So I went and found a bootleg PDF so I could skim it. And then then I had to tell my wife, I'm like, I'm buying these pickup books, so it is for research. But it's so good. I mean, it's sales 101, but from a transactional standpoint, I mean, because I tell people all the time, selling is courtship, selling is dating. There's a game, there's a rhythm, there's a choreography to this, and
But the distinction is with your local businesses is I would ask, is what they're selling a commodity and therefore transactional, or is it something that is actually relational? Because if they're selling commodities, if they're selling something that is not relational, then by all means use those tactics. They are really good for that because the customer's relationship is to the transaction, not to the individual product. And so if
so I agree 100% on that. There are also, even to deepen a relationship, if you're going for the true relationship, there are still parts of this that come out just from human connection and communication, that you can pick up from this. Because I've never been a hard closer teaching. I hate that stuff. But it's like, I think we need to know it. I tell people all the time, fish don't know that they're wet, right? And so we're immersed. I mean, I would say most marketing out there are the douchebag direct marketers. It's that type. And so be aware of what's going on. But there's still, even in the relationship type sale, there's a dance. There's big, if nothing else, because we're bombarded by the other stuff,
this
we
is
have to know how to dance within that.
this is why we use the 12 steps of intimacy, because what Desmond Morris did is he mapped out at the subconscious level all of the actions that are required to build a long-term pair bonded relationship. So as a real quick synopsis on it, back in the late 50s and early 60s, there was this question within science: is the Homo sapien primate a pair bonded or promiscuous species of primate? Because you go from the bonobos that will screw anything interspecies to the gorillas or chimps who have one or two mates per life, and everywhere in between. And there was actually a way that an anatomical way of each species of primate that would you could tell exactly how promiscuous or pair bonded it was, and that was the percentage of the size of the male genitalia of that species. Um, well, the Homo sapien male happens to fit smack in between all primates. And so there was a real question: are we a promiscuous or a pair bonded species of primate? So Desmond Morris, who was a zoologist and clinical researcher, he had actually a show on PBS in the late 70s, early 80s, Um, he did the research in the field, and what he found was that that human beings have a unique trait that other species don't, which is a need for emotional security. And so, based on that need for emotional security, we have a bias for pair bonded relationships while still desiring promiscuity, but we have that bias towards pair bondedness. So then, as a researcher, he asked the next relevant question, which was, what then determines a long term pair bonded relationship? And so what he found was that at the foundational level of building the relationship, that there are these 12 fundamental steps of intimacy that must be followed. And if you skip more than one, so any two, 2 and 4, 3 and 5, 5 and 9, 10, 11, doesn't matter what it is. If you skip more than one step, that the probability of that being a long-term relationship is the same as a one night stand, less than 3%. And his analogy was like laying tile. If you start off at one end of the room, half inch off, by the time you get to
Yep.
the other end of the room, you're a foot off. But you don't at the beginning of the relationship, at the beginning of laying the tile, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. It doesn't feel big. But as the relationship gets deeper and longer, that chasm becomes wider and wider and wider. There's a portion of modern marriage counseling today that's about relaying that tile based on work of Desmond Morris. But what Roy and I asked while doing the research for Pendulum is, in marketing and advertising, what's the difference there versus in building a relationship versus a pair bonded relationship? So a couple of things came up. One is pair bonded relationships happen in an intimate environment. Marketing and advertising are always done in non-intimate environments. The second thing that we determined was that the psychological, physiological, emotional, and mental needs that I have in an intimate environment are the same things that I have in a non-intimate environment. And so if that's the case, but non-intimate environments have they're not intimate by definition, and they can at best emulate intimacy. What that then requires in marketing and advertising is to consciously do in a non-intimate environment all the things that you subconsciously and unconsciously do in an intimate environment, so that the other party feels respected and not objectified, like the woman being picked up by the pickup artist. And so what you do then is what we did is we correlated the 12 steps of intimacy for pair bonded relationships to the 12 steps of intimacy for building a relationship with your customer. Because again, intimate or not, human beings are human beings, human beings. We're not actually changing when we're in a non-intimate environment or an intimate environment. And so in knowing that, what you're able to do is more consciously do the little things in marketing and advertising and in sales that reflect what happens in an intimate environment, so that you don't violate the things that build those steps. What happens in selling and direct response more specifically is that they're trying to go from step 1, 2, or 3 to step 8, 9, or 10 and skipping everything in between. And in reality, you need to go through all of that. Now, um, I indicated that if you skip 2 steps or more, that it's a transaction. If you have a model set up for 12 steps of intimacy for your customer, what you're conveying to them is respect and that you want to build a relationship. If they then decide to skip more than one step, that's fine. You'll take them on as a client. But the other thing that you'll note, and this is for my business and in all of my clients' businesses, is if somebody skips 2 steps, you know they're not likely to stick around. They're coming in transactionally, even though it might normally be sold relationally. They're coming in transactionally, and so they're going to get what they want, and then they're going to be gone. They're going to be gone after that single service. So based on that, you can then define and say, okay, well, we're not going to put extra work into it because it doesn't matter what we do. It's transactional. They just want this thing. We're going to give them exactly what we promised, and then move on.
So how I equate this to like getting off of drugs, right? And I've had family members go through detox, and it's freaking brutal, But if they are churning and burning, hey, I spend 5 grand a month on ads, and I make 10 grand, and it keeps the lights on, and I don't know what else to do. It's like, well, take that 5 grand, shift your marketing, go towards longer term, blah blah blah. It's like, okay, in a year from now, you'll make 20 grand a month, but for 6 months you may not make anything. I mean, how
Well,
how
so
does how do people get off of that cycle?
One of the things to consider is, well, there's the adage, it works smarter, not harder. But um, one of the things to consider in life is that there's always a trade off of time, money, or quality. So you never sacrifice quality. That's something that in business you should never sacrifice. So then it's a question of, are you sacrificing money or are you sacrificing time? If you want to grow your business and you have a limited amount of budget, you're going to do it properly, you're going to spend more time. That's the place where you are going to put more investment. And as part of that, it's also work smartly. Like for a lot of businesses, I would ask, are you part of your local BNI? Are you part of the local Better Business Bureau? Are you going out to the networking events? Right? These are things that take time, but not a lot of money. Not a lot of money, but things that increase the exposure and the relationship capital that you're building. Right. So I'd look at those kinds of things, but I would also say, look, we need to come up with a strategy where you're doing more work. So as an example, even from a book standpoint, I could take one of your clients through my book outlining process. They would end up with, as part of that outline, 64 different topics that we know what we know what the title is, the big idea, we know what the story is, we know what the nuts and bolts and the hope are, and they could get on their computer or on their phone and film a video fleshing out each of those 64 things and then publish a video. That's time. They have to publish it and then, go out and talk about it. Then they could strip out the audio. There are tools that do it for cheaper for free and create podcast segments. And then they could transcribe that with Google, with Google, and they do it for little or free, and then convert that into and edit that into a blog post, and then pull out some quotes for social media posts and get that out there. Like these are top things that you could certainly put a team around you to do it at a higher professional level, but you could also do it at the less expensive level and do all of that work yourself and get it out. That's the type of thing that can be done if you don't have money. It's about figuring out how to then best spend your time.
Yeah. And dude, it's hard. I mean, most people are terrible. They're terrible at sales and marketing, and they become an entrepreneur. It's like Michael Gerber's E-Myth, the entrepreneurial myth. He said most people are not entrepreneurs. They're technicians with sporadic fits of entrepreneurism. And they just, people cannot communicate. And I think I know it has gotten worse. I mean, raising my kids, they're squared away, but their friends are not. I'm working on a book. Please date my daughters. Because 2 years ago, the word of the year was Riz. And it was the need, and I forget my subtitle, but like the need to develop Riz, charisma in business and in life. Like, people cannot communicate. And whether it's the internet and social media and smartphones, and then COVID and work from home, and they can game, they can text, but they cannot communicate. My daughter just went on to her junior prom with a bunch of friends, juniors and seniors, and they're all athletes, and these girls are beautiful. And most of them did not have a date. They just my wife drove them. And it's like, boys, what are y'all doing? Because like, I'm torn, right? As a dad, like, I'm glad boys aren't pawing all over my daughters, but conversely, like, I got a 20-year-old, but like literally, like, never really dated, no boyfriends, beautiful, blue eyes, athletic. Yeah, I got a 22-year-old. She's 23. She's had a couple long-term boyfriends, but dude just broke up with her, broke her heart. I mean, these are smart, athletic. My junior, curvy. Let's just put it that way. Blonde, blue eyes. I'm like, okay, I'm glad. Boys aren't talking to her, but I'm sad too. I mean, they should be dating, right? They should experience courtship and understand relationships. But companies, dude, my son, he's doing great as a realtor, and he's always been entrepreneurial. He's my second son. He was buying cars in high school. He'd buy trucks, Jeeps, disassemble them, like take the lights off, sell the tires, put regular tires, take the big winch off, sell that, put up stock. He would drive it for 3 months, make 3 grand on parts, and sell it for 3 grand. So a kid in high school making 6 grand on one vehicle, when others are like making 15 bucks an hour waiting tables. So he's totally entrepreneurial, but he can't write. I'm helping him write a report, as an agent, how to get more listings. He throws into Chat GPT and thinks it's good enough. I'm like, dude, no,
Yeah.
no. So how do these people learn how to market, how to communicate? I mean, they're great plumbers, they're great chiropractors, they're terrible marketers.
This is why we have the academy. Right? I mean, this is why Roy is at Roy wrote Roy's books, and why we put the courses at the academy together, because it's a nonprofit business communication school. It's not really marketing, it's not really advertising, it's business communication. And that's what we teach at the academy. So one of the things I would advocate is, if you've got a small business client, get them out to the Magical Worlds of Wizard of Ads course at the Wizard Academy. Like that's a simple way. And for your clients, you probably could get Daniel, the chancellor, if you asked him to extend your rate, which is half off, to your clients. I can't promise you that he does that, but I've seen him do that in the past, and it's something that can happen. So I would say get him to the academy.
No, they got to bite the bullet just like I did.
Well, they haven't bite the bullet, but
Bite it once,
there you
then you
go.
get half off. Hey, I did it. Now, so funny story, right? I gamed the system, or I worked within the rules of the system. So I don't. Do you remember Steve Clark?
Yeah, I do. Sales guy out of
So
Florida.
yeah, and I was a sales guy, right? And I was living in Austin, and I was doing well in sales. I'd made 100 grand at least in sales since 98, 99. But I had a bunch of kids, I mean, but we left Austin at the end of '04, and we had 5 kids. And then we had 2 more. And so I'm doing fine. But man, I was like, 2002, 2003, that time frame, like 3 grand, 4 grand. I was like, man, that's a grip. And so I was reading his books. I'd go to the free things, but he came out with a virtual class, and Steve Clark was teaching. It was a 12-week teleclass, and this was the end of '05. He promoted it hard and early, like end of '05. Didn't start till early '06. He wanted to make sure he could fill it, but it wasn't that big. I mean, it's like 35, 45 people. I mean, it wasn't hundreds. But I prepaid for that, and I got my company to let me expense some of it. But it was just $600, and they were like, "And hey, you're a graduate. This counts." So I was like, "Yes!" So it was the cheapest class he had ever offered, and then he didn't do it for very long. I don't think he even did it again. But that got me in. Man, I've spent I've
For
spent
anyone
thousands.
who wants to deploy that same thing, Chris Maddock, who is one of Roy's top writers, does a monthly advanced writer copy course online, and you can do the same thing.
Yeah, there you go. So I'll steer people to that. But it's like you gotta you value what you put into something,
Yes.
you know, and now like it's so much better with the housing and all. It's like just get your butt there. I mean, everything's paid for. Great food, great booze, great rooms. The accommodations are first class, man, and the teaching and the networking. Holy crap! I go back for reunions every now and then. I take my mom; she's out in Bastrop, and we'll go out. I just love being there. So good stuff. So, man, who should contact you? Just authors? I mean, do you
Well,
work with businesses in general?
yeah, we work with business owners, and we use books as a way to promote their business. While I'm known for the 131 New York Times bestsellers, that's about 30% of our work now. What we really do is build businesses for influencers and thought leaders. We're not doing brick and mortar stores. We're dealing with folks that are changing someone's heart, body, mind, or soul. Something that is a harder sale in that capacity. But if you're a business owner who is building that kind of a business, then we can work. And a book may or may not be the one of the tactics that we use. It's one we use a lot because it's repurposable and reusable in a lot of different ways, especially in terms of our 12 steps. But we're not like most direct response marketers who focus on one tactic, we define outcome. This is what I'm sure you do with your client: define outcome, define the measurement metric, define the strategy, and then define the tactics. What most direct response marketers do, they define the tactics and see what works. And that's the wrong way to do it. Outcome, measurement of outcome, strategy, and the strategy then dictates the tactic. So that's how we do it. And a if the book is a tactic that builds the business, then we do it. But if it's not, or at least not for right now, then we don't do it.
Yep. Cool. And so are you on your own? Are you part of the Wizard of Ads community?
Well, I'm certainly plugged into that community, but I own my own company. I
Right.
promote a
Okay.
book for Bestseller. We do a book retreat at bookretreat.com. So yeah, I own my own company.
Okay. Cool. 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 Very nice. So where should we send our listeners?
I
Where
think they'd probably enjoy bookretreat.com for your audience. It really simple, because we do book retreats, but it also talks about our other services. If somebody's interested in what I call platform building, they can email me directly. And my email is michael@promoteabook.com, Michael at promoteabook.com.
Very cool, man. Well, I could talk for a while. We didn't even talk about Pendulum. I'm a point him to my review of Pendulum. How about that?
You can do
Uh,
absolutely, and I say some of the content you're welcome to share. And if you'd like to have me back, I'm happy to come back and
yeah,
be more go deeper on whatever you'd like to go deeper on.
dude, you have a standing invitation. You got a link to my calendar, so
All
I
right.
don't want to overstay my welcome, but I will nudge you regularly from now on since you threw that out there. Careful what you wish for, man. You got the sales whisperer. You're now in my sights. You're my crosshairs. I'm gonna drag you down. I'm gonna do my jujitsu. I'm gonna grab you. I'm gonna hold you down and put a microphone in your face. You just thought that hair is crazy. Wait till I get done with you.
I have no hair when you're done with me. I get it.
Dude, I got beat up yesterday. I'm too nice to these guys, these little guys. They go hard. I'm an old grandpa, man. I'm a lover, not a fighter. But you know that.
Absolutely. You got to be doing what you do, man.
Drew from Lehigh. Thanks for coming on the show, man. It's been great catching up with you.
Thank you, my friend. It was a real pleasure.
All right, man. Have a good day. $1,000. I'm probably about $700,000 now. But look, here's my promise to you. If you give me $400,000, I promise to put you at the top of my Christmas list. Okay, you will get a gift. It'll be early. It'll be nice. Okay, for at least like 5 years, probably 10. And I'll give you my cell phone. Okay, I'll be there for you. Crazy, huh? But hey, that's life in the big leagues. And I liked his reply on gaming the system or playing within the rules of the game. Knowing how the game is done. So it was a good analogy. And hey, so if you got a book in you, if you want to go big, call Michael. That dude can hook you up. He will help you. I don't think that's in my future anytime soon, but yeah, you never know. I am working on, I'm updating the Sales Whisperer way. I am working on that. Please Date My Daughter. So I got to buckle down and get that going. Just a lot on my plate, probably like you. Okay. So, I mentioned the Weekly Whisper. I did not mention 12 Weeks to Peak. I am taking on a couple of private clients. If you want one-on-one daily accountability, so obviously I can't take on too many, but literally daily, we will talk, we will text, we will communicate to help you reach your goals: faith, family, fitness, and finance. If that's something of interest, if you need that kind of accountability to buckle down, to focus, to detour around, less but better. And we all need that to a degree. We all have too much going on. You need to focus. There's a lot of distractions out there, a lot of shiny objects, AI, social media. I call it pot, porn, and playoffs. Who's holding your feet to the fire? And it's hard, right? You can't really have employees do it. It's hard sometimes to have your spouse do it. Maybe it's your partner, co-owner, whatever. Maybe you don't have one. So having a neutral, experienced, gray-haired third party help you with that can be a big benefit. So if you are interested in that, hit me up. You can go to westschaefer.com, and there's links and whatnot in the description here underneath each video and podcast. But reach out. You get a link to my calendar. My cell phone's there, and it's mine, right? I answer it. So just text me beforehand so I know who you are. Get the help you need to grow to your full potential. All right. Thanks for listening. I'll go sell something.